Have you ever been in a situation where you're playing your instrument and thought, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be here. Everyone else is better than me. They should be here, not me. They must all be just humouring me. Welcome to Imposter Syndrome. Hello, home music creators. Yes, imposter syndrome is that nagging feeling of self-doubt and inadequacy, despite your achievements and skills. And it's that that's the killer. That even if really you know that you're skillful, you have tons of experience, you have lots of evidence of people telling you how good you are, imposter syndrome can still strike. I'm not immune to this, and I don't believe any other musician is immune to this. Whether it's playing with other musicians in a band situation, recording or mixing a song, or even just watching other guitarists on YouTube. Personally, I can start to feel completely inadequate and thinking, why do I bother? What is the point? You start to hugely doubt your ability and think, should I just give it all up? So why do we experience this completely counterproductive feeling? Good question. I'm not a psychologist, I've no idea. But I think that there are certain things that we do that can aggravate the situation. I think a big one is comparing ourselves to others, leading us to set impossible standards for ourselves to reach and really fearing failure. Now, I mentioned, watching other guitarists on YouTube. There are so many fantastic guitarists on YouTube who have miles better technique than I do. So it's easy to think, why should I bother? What place do I have in that world? But that doesn't take into account that I am perfectly capable of doing what I need to be able to do. And I have lots and lots of evidence over the years of me doing precisely that. So if you're going through this, I think the first thing to realise is you are not alone. It happens to the best of us. I watched a video relatively recently. It was an interview with the great Brian May, who is the person responsible for me ever picking up the guitar in the first place, more than anybody else. I love Brian May. And he has expressed very similar feelings regarding modern guitarist skills. And he's on record discussing his own experience of imposter syndrome. Brian May, who has played in front of millions and millions of people on stages all over the world, he is not immune to this. I'll put a link to that video in the description below, and there should be a card up there. So why is imposter syndrome a problem? Well, it can be incredibly debilitating. It can derail our creativity and cause writer's block, and it can limit our opportunities because we stop putting ourselves forward for things due to this crippling self-doubt and a belief that we shouldn't be there anyway. It can cause stress and anxiety in musicians, leading us maybe to stop completely or self-sabotaging our musical activities or even careers. It can cause stage fright and performance anxiety, and at worst, it can cause mental health issues and illness. I must say at this stage that I am not a mental health professional, and if you are suffering to that extent, don't listen to an idiot like me. Please seek out proper help from a real mental health professional, please. So what can we do about it? How do we as musicians cope with imposter syndrome? I've already said, realise it's not just you. I mentioned Brian May. There are lots of others on record who have detailed their own experiences of imposter syndrome, such as Lady Gaga, David Bowie, Lewis Capaldi. So, we're in pretty esteemed company here. I think if you can frame it in your mind that it's just part of being a musician and recognise when these feeling occurs and sort of say, okay, yep, that's my imposter syndrome again. It's just part of what I do. It's part of who I am, and it's nothing to be feared. Know that you will feel like this from time to time, and it's just part of being a musician. I think if you recognise that, and one thing that helps me is to notice and name those feelings, those thoughts when they occur. For example, if you notice yourself thinking, oh, I'm not good enough to be doing this, you can say, oh, yep, there's that not good enough thought again. Hello, thought. It may sound silly, but just naming it and noticing what it is, it reduces some of the power of it. It's important to remember the brain has thousands upon thousands of thoughts every day. It just keeps going. It never stops. But it's entirely up to us whether we believe them or not. An example I often use is, suppose you have the thought, I am a tree. Well, you don't have to believe that thought. Just because you think it doesn't mean you are actually a tree. I think another useful tactic is to seek support from fellow musicians. It won't just be you going through this, and you will find musicians who've had very, very similar experiences, probably the vast majority of musicians. And they will be able to tell you, you're being silly, of course you're good enough, give you examples of your achievements, and hopefully start to make you feel a little bit better. And of course you can return the favour. I often joke that band rehearsals are a bit like therapy, you know, and I very rarely go to a band rehearsal feeling worse at the end of it than I do when I started. It's important to talk about these things. One of the enemies of musicians mentally is perfectionism. It took me a long time in my life to realise that perfectionism is a bad thing. Nothing is perfect. You know, if you interview any major artist who's released an album some time ago and ask them, oh, what would you change about it? They'll always be able to come up with some things. I think it was Leonardo da Vinci who said, art is never finished, it's just abandoned. And there's a lot of truth in that. But those artists who released those albums, they released them anyway and said, okay, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. I've done this myself. You know, my EP Smile, listening back to the mixes now, yeah, there are things that I would change about them. In particular, you know, I would bring the drums up, the drum level higher in the mixes. And this, you know, putting yourself out there when you know something's not perfect can be difficult, but try to focus on the progress that you're making rather than perfection. And I think finally, don't beat yourself up. Oh, I know that's easier said than done, but everyone has these thoughts. It's just part of being creative. Try and use the techniques detailed in this video and talk to yourself compassionately. If we talk to other people like we talk to ourselves, we probably get punched a lot. Because how many times do we often say things to ourselves like, oh, I'm such an idiot, I'm such a loser, what did I do that for? Oh, you complete numpty. You don't talk to other people like that. Why do you talk to yourself like that? Try and talk to yourself like you would a friend going through a similar thing. Hopefully I haven't waffled on too much in this video, but remember, imposter syndrome, it's very, very common, but it does not define your worth as a musician or anything else. Try some of the techniques in this video. Hopefully they will help for you. Other more general techniques may help, such as meditation, mindfulness, just general relaxation. There are many, many videos on YouTube on such subjects, and I encourage you to seek them out and see if they work for you. They might not, but that's okay. If something doesn't work for you, abandon that and try something else. And finally, if it helps, feel free to comment down below with your experiences of imposter syndrome, and let's see if we can create a supportive community down there that listens to and helps each other out. This is Paul from Home Music Creator signing off. See you in the next video. Cheers.